In the quiet suburbs of Dallas, where mornings began with the sound of birds and evenings faded into golden silence, lived a woman everyone knew, Mrs. Anderson. She was 75. Her silver hair shone softly under the sun, and she always wore a warm smile, the kind that could make even strangers feel at home. About 40 years ago, when she and her husband first moved into the neighborhood, it was a brand new locality, small, peaceful, and filled with young families starting their lives. Back then, the Anderson house was full of life. Her husband, Mr. George Anderson, was a cheerful man who loved gardening. On weekends, he could always be seen trimming the roses while Mrs. Anderson baked cookies for the neighborhood children. Their laughter often echoed down the street. They had 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The kids went to the nearby school, played baseball in the evenings, and often invited friends over for lemonade on hot summer days. It was a house of warmth, of noise, of love. But time changes everything. The children grew up, they left for college, one after another, each moving to a different state in search of their dreams. And then, one unfortunate winter morning, Mr. Anderson passed away. From that day on, the once lively house grew quieter. The garden still bloomed, but without his laughter, even the flowers seemed less bright. Mrs. Anderson stayed strong. She used to tell my mother, "Life goes on. You just have to keep walking." And she did. Every morning, she'd take her walking stick and stroll to the nearby park. She'd wave to every child she saw, pat their heads, and sometimes share candies from her small purse. The kids loved her. Every adult in the area knew her as the smiling lady with the stick. But behind that smile, there was something else: loneliness. She lived alone. Her children rarely called. Sometimes months passed before she heard their voices. Yet she never complained. Whenever my mom asked her how her kids were doing, she'd smile gently and say, "They're busy, you know. Big jobs, big cities. I'm happy if they're happy." But sometimes her eyes would wander to the road, as if waiting for someone to appear. She had only one wish: to live with her children. One day, she'd often tell her old friends, "One of them will come to take me. Any day now." And her friends would nod, smile, and pray for her wish to come true. As years went by, the neighborhood changed. Old families moved away, new people moved in. The once close-knit community began to scatter. But Mrs. Anderson stayed. She was like a part of the town's soul, the old tree that had seen generations grow. Sometimes she'd pick up the phone to call one of her children. "Hello, dear, it's Mom," she'd say. A short conversation, a few polite words, then silence. They always promised to visit. They never did. Then, one week, we noticed she wasn't at the park. No one saw her waving from her gate or sitting on her porch. At first, we thought perhaps her son had come and taken her to his place. A few days later, my mom said maybe she finally got her wish. We all smiled at the thought. But as weeks turned into months, her little white house remained closed. The mailbox began to fill with letters. The flowers in her garden withered. Still, no one got much. Everyone believed she was finally with her children. 7 months passed. One summer morning, a car stopped in front of the old Anderson house. A young woman stepped out. Tired eyes, hurried movements. It was Mrs. Anderson's daughter. She rang the doorbell. Once, twice. No answer. She knocked harder, calling out, "Mom, Mom, it's me." Nothing. Only silence answered her. Confused, she looked around and saw my mother sweeping her front porch. She rushed to her and asked, "Excuse me, have you seen my mother lately?" My mother looked surprised. "Oh, we all thought she went to live with you." The daughter's face turned pale. She said softly, "No, I haven't heard from her in months. Her phone's been off." The police were called. When they arrived, they broke the door. As it opened, a faint, unpleasant smell filled the air. The officers entered quietly, flashlights in hand. The living room was still, covered in dust. A teacup sat on the table beside a half-finished scarf and a pair of glasses. And there, on the floor, lay what was left of Mrs. Anderson. Her body long decomposed. It was as if time had stopped the day she died. Beside her, on the floor, was her phone, dead and silent. The police later said it seemed she had collapsed suddenly, perhaps from a heart attack. No one had come. No one had known. Her daughter screamed, collapsing to her knees. She called her brothers, who soon arrived, their faces pale and shaken. The entire neighborhood gathered outside, watching in disbelief. We all cried. No one could believe that the same woman who had greeted every child, every neighbor with kindness, had died so utterly alone. 2 days later, the funeral was held. It was a quiet, gray morning. Only a few people attended, mostly old neighbors and her friends from the park. Her children stood silently, faces filled with guilt. As the priest read the final prayer, a light drizzle began to fall. Gentle, like tears from the sky. My mother whispered, "She waited for them all her life, and when they finally came, she couldn't see them." After her death, no one in the neighborhood was ever quite the same. Her locked house became a painful reminder of how people age, how families drift apart, and how easy it is to forget the ones who once gave us everything. Sometimes, when I walk past that house, I can almost see her sitting by the window, knitting and smiling, waiting for a knock that never came. Mrs. Anderson's story isn't just about one woman. It's about all the forgotten parents who wait by the phone, hoping to hear their children's voices. It's about how love doesn't fade with age, but sometimes attention does. So if you still have your parents, call them today. Don't let later become never, because one day, like Mrs. Anderson, they'll be gone, leaving behind an empty house and a silence that can never be filled again.